In ancient Rome, becoming emperor did not make you safe. It made you a target. The most powerful man in the Roman world could not afford to look afraid, but he also knew something dangerous. Every emperor before him had faced betrayal. Some had been assassinated, some overthrown, some abandoned by their own guards. Rome did not need to kill everyone who opposed the emperor. It only needed everyone to believe it could. Because in Rome, fear did not move in one direction. By the end of this video, you'll understand how Roman emperors used fear to stay in power, and why many of them ruled while fearing the very system that protected them. Rome never created a fixed system for choosing the next emperor. There was no automatic succession, no guaranteed heir, no stable transition. The army often decided. Sometimes the Senate tried. Sometimes the Praetorian Guard made the final choice. After Nero's death, the year of the 4 emperors proved how unstable the throne really was. 4 rulers in 1 year. If power could change that quickly, what did that mean for the man sitting on it? Every emperor understood something simple. Authority without security is temporary, and that's where fear begins. But the first place it was applied might surprise you. An emperor could not rule without the army, but the army was also his greatest threat. Legions followed generals. Generals could declare themselves emperor, and once a legion marched toward Rome, the throne was already at risk. So, emperors invested heavily in loyalty. Soldiers were paid well, bonuses were distributed, public honors reinforced allegiance. But loyalty alone wasn't enough. No general could grow too powerful. No commander could become too admired. When Sejanus, head of the Praetorian Guard under Tiberius, became influential, he was executed in a single day. From the outside, it looked decisive. Inside the palace, it was preventative. And this is important. Fear at the top was often about limiting alternatives, because once someone else looks capable of ruling, the emperor no longer looks irreplaceable. But the military was only one layer. The real psychological pressure existed elsewhere. Most ordinary Romans never attended Senate debates, but senators understood risk. Under Tiberius, charges of treason expanded. Under Domitian, criticism became dangerous. Under Nero, conspiracies led to sweeping retaliation. But here's something often misunderstood. Fear was not constant chaos. It was selective, visible enough to instruct, measured enough to avoid collapse. When boundaries are unclear, people regulate themselves. Senators spoke carefully. Ambition softened. Public loyalty became louder. And this is where fear becomes efficient. But elite fear wasn't the whole story. The streets looked different. While suspicion shaped politics inside the palace, most citizens saw spectacle, triumphal parades, captured enemies, public games, grand speeches. Even small victories were amplified. Coins circulated across the empire showing strength. Titles reinforced divine favor. When strength is all people see, weakness becomes invisible. Architecture strengthened this illusion. After civil war, Vespasian built the Colosseum. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a statement. Rome is stable again. Massive stone creates permanence, even when permanence isn't guaranteed. And that visual power mattered more than most people realized. But here's the subtle part. Even if citizens saw strength, they still understood limits. Most Romans did not wake up terrified. They cared about grain supply, security, taxes, and entertainment. If those were stable, the emperor appeared competent. But awareness existed. Rebellious provinces were crushed. Estates were confiscated. Names were erased. People knew where the boundaries were. They did not fear random violence. They feared crossing invisible lines. Fear in the streets was quiet. It defined limits. And when limits are understood, order feels natural. But here's the irony. The more fear secured order, the more it isolated the emperor himself. Rome did not have modern secret police, but it had informants. Accusations could bring reward. Whispers could trigger investigation. When trust declines, self-protection rises. The emperor did not need to monitor everyone. The possibility of scrutiny was enough. But here's the cost. The more suspicion grows, the fewer people you can trust. And when power becomes isolated, danger feels closer, which leads to the final layer. Caligula was assassinated. Domitian was killed by members of his own court. Nero, was abandoned. The more an emperor relied on fear, the more resentment quietly accumulated. Fear secures obedience, but it also accelerates betrayal. So, emperors walked a narrow line. Enough fear to prevent challenge, enough spectacle to project strength, enough distance to seem untouchable. If he punished too harshly or too often, powerful people might stop fearing him and start working together to remove him. And this balancing act defined Roman imperial power. Over time, fear stopped being personal. It became structural. Treason laws remained, praetorian influence remained, centralized authority remained. Even moderate emperors inherited this architecture. They did not always intensify it, but they rarely dismantled it because it worked. It discouraged rebellion at the top. It reassured citizens below. It created controlled tension. Rome did not survive because emperors were fearless. It survived because fear was managed. When we look back at Rome, we often focus on dramatic moments, assassinations, rebellions, palace conspiracies. But those were flashes. The deeper story was quieter. It unfolded in courtrooms and in Senate debates. Fear did not roar through the empire every day. It remained quietly embedded in law, in administration, and in the mind. Over time, that structure made resistance feel irrational, because in Rome, power did not need to strike constantly. It only needed to be believed to be watching, permanent and decisive. That belief preserved emperors longer than violence ever could. Rome was not sustained by fear alone. It was sustained by certainty. Certainty that power was present, consequences were real, and the system would endure. And perhaps that is the lasting lesson of Roman rule. The most effective fear is not loud, it is controlled. So here's the question. Is power stronger when it is feared, or when it is quietly believed to be unchallengeable? If you enjoy documentaries that explore power, control, and the systems behind history, consider subscribing, because that's what allows us to keep uncovering stories like this.